concept to run past you. So I have a patient that has done part of the holistic mental wellness program about 1.5 years ago. Had really good results. She came in with panic, anxiety, their diagnosis of OCD, PTSD, and some really major triggers that put her in an obsessive state of mind. So she went for about 1.5 years after that. Fantastic, really good, not needing much of any support at all. Now those same symptoms are coming back, and I wanted your perspective on the symptom as it relates to nutrition, of course, like how you can relate it to, and then how we could relate it to emotional for our patients.
Okay, so she had diagnoses, she was having severe symptoms set. She did energy work in a program with you. Went 1.5 years, the honeymoon period is what I will end up calling this in nutrition, and then now she's flaring again.
Correct.
Okay. Well, first of all, in NRT and in European biological medicine, one of the first principles that they teach and that we believe in is the realization that your body has symptoms to show you when something is not aligned or to show you when something is wrong. Mm-hmm. And just like we use that same analogy all the time of the check engine light, but it just works so well because obviously you would rather know that something is wrong underneath the hood of your car than have it suddenly blow up on the side of the road. So the check engine light comes on just to alert you that there's something that has to be done, or pay attention and ideally get it handled before something more major happens. So in my field, we try to do the best job that we can to educate people on listening to their body, because they are going to get triggered by certain things. It's just inevitable around us. There are so many different pollutants and toxicities and toxic foods, just any number of things that can cause, I'll just say, inflammation in the body. And the inevitable result is the body is going to have a symptom from that. So culturally, I think that we've been a little bit brainwashed into thinking there's such thing as a symptom-free life, which is not in alignment with reality, because you really don't want a symptom-free life, because it would mean that your body is truly malfunctioning and not telling you when there's something wrong. So we actually take it as far as realizing that when you have a quote trigger or a symptom, let's just say pain, that it truly is a direct message back to your mind to think, okay, now what did I do, or what did I eat, or where was I? Oh yeah, I was just in a town all day long that has a paper mill in it, and I was breathing super toxic, mercury in the coal burning paper mill air. Or I spent the day at the golf course and they spray pesticides all day long, and that's poison, and I just breathed it in all day long. Or, oh yeah, I went out to eat and I ate a pizza loaded with gluten and sugar and dairy, and it turns out I'm allergic to all of that. And so of course I have a symptom. Maybe it's not a gut symptom, maybe it's a migraine, or maybe my eyes are all blurry and fuzzy, maybe my joints are hurting. But you use that as information to then do the feedback loop to be like, oh yeah, okay, that's why I don't feel well. And then ideally you learn from it. And it doesn't mean you're always going to be perfect, but it's like data mining. It's like really useful information for you to be able to correlate your symptoms with whatever happened prior to that. So the goal isn't to be in a vacuum and always have absolutely pure every possible thing all day, every day, because that wouldn't be realistic. But knowledge is power. So if your number one goal is to be clear of your migraines and your joint pain and your gut distress and your anxiety and your panic and your depression, and you have, let's just say 90% say over what you're ingesting or what you're breathing in, or if you're breathing in toxicity, you're taking something to detox it. Now you have so much more power than you did before to feel really well and be highly energetic. So that's the only way that you would know what's going in is polluting your body. So that's why we see symptoms as a good thing. So liken that to emotional health. So physical health is always a combination of spiritual health, emotional health, and physical health. Your physical experience, I should say, is the way that you experience your life is always the result of emotional, spiritual, and physical. So when you have emotional triggers or emotional symptoms, once again, it would never be realistic to think that you're going to go through life and you're never going to feel some depression, or you're never going to have some sadness or some grief or experience loss and then the grief that comes with that. Because if that were the case, you wouldn't be alive. Like, that's just reality. However, you can learn how to go through your symptoms in a healthy manner and learn from them. So that means if you are somebody who's prone to panic attacks, you want to find out what it actually is when you get triggered like that. And if it's something that's stored in your subconscious memory files, just like on a computer, you can actually clear that junk, that junk box out, and you can actually start over with a new blueprint or new programming. And that's subconscious brain work. But then conscious brain work is equally as important, where when you know that there is a situation that you have a tendency to get triggered and fly off the deep end, that there would be, just like with taking supplements, for instance, when you're going to be in pesticides all day long, there are absolutely fantastic tools that can work really beautifully. And it doesn't mean that it's taking the toxicity away, or the environmental toxicity away, or the trigger or the person away. It's simply that you're giving yourself the tools, and you learn from, okay, the depression is back, or the anxiety is back. You can learn really excellent, that shows you the information that you need in order to kind of know which tool to take out of the toolbox, I guess. And then you have to apply that. If you want to, again, be symptom-free in that situation, you really would have to apply the tools.
Okay, so saying the symptom comes in, so we're looking at it as a messenger, and so my OCD tendency is back, so I'm obsessing about something. So the message isn't none of that worked, or I am completely unhealthy emotionally. The actual messenger, or what we're intended to look for as the messenger, is what either triggered that, and what tools do I have to use to get myself out of this.
Exactly.
So how do I move forward with this? And then you would say that symptoms are obviously going to continue.
Absolutely.
Whether it's physical or whether it's emotional, because we put ourselves in life situations.
Correct.
And so then a messenger will come up. And so when an OCD tendency comes, or whatever that person tends to, then you say, what's going on within? Why did that happen? Not in a blaming, not in a getting stuck.
No.
So same thing when we talk about being in the flow of the river all the time. This is a rock, and that's okay. How fast can we get out from behind the rock and get back in the flow? And so asking what those messengers are. So let's do a couple examples of what is a messenger?
That was
what is it?
What you just said, in my opinion, though, is key when you said how fast can we get back into the flow. So to me, it's like, let's say you spend your whole day on the golf course and you get loaded with pesticides. Well, if you leave all of that in your system for a solid week, not only are you going to be highly symptomatic, I mean, your body will eventually work through it and do its best to detox, but depending on the person, if you have methylation trouble, you might not get rid of it actually. So you could wait a whole week and then take your detoxers, or you could be sipping it throughout the whole day on the golf course, and then as soon as you leave, you down the rest of it, and you get it out like that. That example B, you're going to do much less damage to your body because you're not leaving all of these super poisonous heavy metals and chemicals in the system to do the damage for the whole week. So it's the same concept with once you learn, okay, this is my trigger and this is my go-to tool, the goal would be not never feeling the pain, never feeling the depression, never feeling the symptom, but okay, what tool do I have? Being empowered to know, and then putting on your big girl pants and doing it, right? So it's like, okay, I'm going to do the tough work now. Maybe that's meditate. Maybe it's prayer. Maybe it's getting into a super high resonating frequency. Maybe it's worship music. I mean, everybody is completely different. What takes their vibration from super low to super high. But that's the state that you get back into as quickly as you possibly can with whatever tools you're using. And that is what's going to do the least amount of emotional damage.
Yes.
And then, like in the physical sense, the least amount of damage to your adrenal glands and the least amount of fight or flight response that you're stuck in. Because of course, that's the state that causes all the chronic diseases. So your goal is to always, that vagal nerve, that vagal tone, to always be able to drop into rest and digest, healing, deep breathing, being grounded, being aligned. That's the state in which the physical body can heal. So it's the emotional self so frequently that takes you up and catapults you into sympathetics, fight or flight, and that's the disease state. So you need that tool to be identified, and then that action step of actually practicing and doing whatever it is that takes you to the place that you need to be from a frequency perspective.
Beautiful. So this is another example. When someone comes through the program, we set goals at the beginning, and we ask the body then, how do we get there? What services do you need to get there? And we get to the end and we do a progress report. And some people are like, okay, so I'm good now. Or why didn't I conquer my sleep, for instance? So we've worked together, say 6-8 weeks. Mm-hmm. Even if they're working with you also, sleep is a big one.
Big one, because of that lack of parasympathetic nervous system activation that so many people nowadays have as a result of all of it. Social media being one of the biggest. Way too ridiculously stressed out lifestyles, i.e. sports, i.e. crazy academics, i.e. type A perfectionism tendency, Protestant work ethic, all of that we have going on in America. So being able to actually get into rest and digest parasympathetic healing overnight is a gigantic problem for Americans.
Right.
Other places too, but we kind of have it pretty bad.
Right.
Yeah.
But so at the end of a program, then it's not actually realistic to think it's over. Like I'm
again,
here.
not unless your life is over. I mean, right?
Right. I mean, and miraculous things happen every day.
Yeah.
So I'm not putting any limitations on it. But for us to think, just like in nutrition, that emotional is going to be 6 to 8 weeks and then I'm good to go, is not necessarily a reality for most people.
No, and I think one of the biggest things is just people don't realize that because they've never had it put in front of them. I mean, I wouldn't go to a dentist once in my life or twice or for 6 or 8 weeks and then think, okay, I'm good now. Because obviously my teeth are aging.
Right.
If anything, I probably need to take better care of them as I age. The same with your eyes. So those are two physical places on the body, but the physical body as a whole, if anything, you need to maintain, you want to sustain your health as far as you can with quality health. At least that's my opinion. I think in America we have a tendency to think no matter what, longevity is everything. We can never die, but nobody ever talks about quality of life in this long-lived body. So we think about a dentist or an eye doctor, we think about taking care of those areas. Of course, everybody goes to the dentist every year, you know, or the eye doctor every year. But the actual, like the whole computer system that's operating the whole ship, that's where nutrition comes in. That's where toxicity comes in. That's where it's like, if you want to maintain this being flat out physical, of course it's going to be a forever thing, because as long as you're alive, you're using it, and you're just like a car. Like as long as you're driving that car, you have to do oil changes, you're going to have to change the tires around, you're going to have to rotate things, you're going to have to clean things out. And that's the only obvious way that it's going to continue to function correctly. Well, the body is way more complex than the car. So, but the emotional state of our beings, you can't separate physical from emotional, from spiritual. That's a fake idea that we have been downloaded into our brains. That doesn't exist. We are one being, and as part of our being, we are emotional beings, we have a physical body, and we are spiritual beings. There isn't this versus that versus that. Mm-hmm. And so one thing that amazes me, it just amazes me sometimes, is a perception of some people that you can be emotionally sick, but you can be physically sick, but you could never be emotionally sick. Mm-hmm. And I don't get that. It's like, I don't understand. So it's appropriate to receive help for your physical body, but especially in some religions and some beliefs there, but it's not okay to get help for your emotional body, because then you're not depending on God. If you're not emotionally healthy, you're not depending on God. But it's okay to be physically unhealthy, and that is somehow totally disconnected from it. It's the strangest thing, but I hear it all the time.
Yeah.
So sorry, that was a little bit of a side note, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to say this because it doesn't make any kind of sense. So we are intrinsically body, soul, and spirit, and so there will never be a misalignment in one area without a misalignment in the other areas. This is just not possible.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah.
And so we're taking care of subconscious. So like when you talk about the honeymoon state in nutrition, so you get all detoxed, you get replenished, and your body's like, yeah, this is fantastic. Things are going great. So emotional works the same way, where you're like, okay, things are going great. I've set boundaries, I'm doing my thing, I got rid of a bunch of baggage.
And then your spiritual path shows up and turns out you actually have deeper stuff that you really need to deal with.
Yeah, which would be where you call it biofilm.
Yes.
We could call it biofilm and emotional also, but it's like, okay, here are your next steps.
Yes.
Symptoms come back. They might be the exact same symptoms we started with however long ago that was. And then it's like, okay, but they're a messenger, so deal with that message, find it within, and then be able to move forward and move out of that.
Yep, I'm going to use an analogy because I use this all the time in NRT. Let's say, so when you say honeymoon period that we're talking about, I'm going to say that you buy a home and it's a used home. And so the first step, you go through and you clean everything, deep clean it, and then you slap new paint on the walls and you upgrade it from the perspective of just the decor. And it's gonna look really fabulous. A year, 2 years in, you decide, you know what, let's actually renovate, let's do a little bit of a remodel, and let's physically really upgrade. So we're gonna do new cabinets in the kitchen, and we're gonna get all new appliances. We're gonna rip out the carpeting and put down hardwood floors. That is starting a new project. It's the same home. You're starting a new project, but you're going deep. You're going in, you're going deep. So at that point, you start ripping up the carpet. What do you think you find underneath? You find mold, you find mites, you find all this dilapidated stuff. You couldn't see it before you pulled the carpet up. But the point is, it was there the whole time. The foundation was actually kind of weak and crumbling. And so you need this remodel project for the home to sustain really long term and be in its best health. But that's not a pretty project.
Right.
Like, you're going much deeper. It's going to take much longer. You're going to kick up a whole bunch of toxic junk. And it's totally worth it once you get to the point of, okay, now we can put a fresh, this down, and we're kind of like restructuring everything. Well, then once you finish that project, now you have something that is actually rebuilt, and it's going to last you a really long time. And you can be in this amazing, beautiful home that you loved before, but now you love it more, and it will last. That's the difference between the honeymoon period, when you just clean stuff and slap new paint up, versus, okay, we're going deep.
Yeah.
And that happens physical body, it happens emotional body, and obviously, really what's happening is it's your spiritual self that's kind of like, all right, let's get the junk out.
Right.
So